If you're talking Nebraska football, you're talking legacy and you're talking recruiting.
You are Locked On Huskers, your daily podcast on the Nebraska Cornhuskers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey gang, DP here, Derrick, Pearson, 93.7 Ticket and Lincoln, America. Thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Some great feedback. Let me thank you, folks, for reaching out, leaving comments, sending direct messages. Greatly appreciate you actually enjoying the content and then sharing your thoughts with me. It means a lot. It helps us with the direction of the podcast, so we know what you want and what you want us to talk about. This episode brought to you by the folks from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because now customers get a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's bonus bets back if your bet doesn't win. Details below. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Pretty good deal. No sweat. First bet. I wanted to spend some time in this episode talking about, and Daniel Kaelin is a Nebraska football legacy. It was a big deal in recruiting with the idea and concept that Daniel Kaelin would consider Nebraska, and Nebraska made the final list of schools on his Final Five list. But what happens when these recruits make their decision? Then it becomes evaluation time. So imagine that within the coaching space at the University of Nebraska, as you're recruiting, you're highlighting and presenting the best version of yourself. And in that, the marketing and sell is that we think we are of the same level or better. And that part is really tricky. That we are on the same level, but better. Better than the other people who are going to offer you, better than you think for yourself, better than you currently are, but we can make you better. And that the student athlete also feels like you're on the same level, but better, that they're going to help you become the greater version of yourself. Now, Kaelin knows Nebraska football. He knows the history. He knows what's going on within the programs. He's heard all about Nebraska football. So then when you start recruiting a legacy kid, there's a different level of pressure. There's a different level of truth. There's a different level of humility that becomes involved. Because if you're a legacy, there is an expectation that you're going to be recruited and that you are worthy. As the university, you feel like in your heart of hearts that this should work. You already know how good we are. You probably wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Nebraska football. That a lot of the relationships that are formed over the course of this thing, that the parents set the tone. So when Kaelin decides that he's not going to play for the University of Nebraska, he's not going to be a Husker, that's a gut punch. That is oh my goodness, that's a blindside. That is wow. We looked in the mirror at ourselves. We thought we were okay, but we're not. It's one thing to be turned down by somebody that has never lived the Husker life, that they don't have Husker blood, they don't understand the history that is Nebraska football. But when somebody knows all that and they already care, they're already aware. But my goodness gracious, when you are rejected by your own, it rattles you to the bone. And look, recruiting losses happen all the time. And a part of my anybody that knows me outside of this podcast knows that recruiting, to me, we spend a lot of time and energy on young people that never become parts of the programs that we're supposed to be covering and be intrigued by. But in specific cases, when it's close to the heart, when you're connected already, when you already know the name, when you already know the family story, when you already are emotionally invested in the family and their Husker life, then when the rejection happens, it runs deeper, it burns deeper, it hurts deeper. And as much as anybody will try to turn their head and go, okay, on to the next, well, not so fast. Because if you're talking recruiting and Nebraska football, and specifically legacy quarterbacks, if you didn't get the first guy, you better get the next guy. Because if two elite level quarterbacks with Husker legacy, blood, and familiarity, and you can't deliver one of them into the program, what are you saying to everybody else? And most importantly, and more directly, what's it saying about the program? This is an evaluation time. Recruiting is a great mirror that programs hold up and say, okay, young man, look into this mirror, and what we want you to see is your future self. Tell me what you see. Is this Nebraska greatness? Is this pipeline? Is this Heisman Trophy? Is this conference champion? Is this multi-time national champion? Is this the Husker community, Husker nation? This is it? And you hold up the mirror, and then they pull down the mirror and they show themselves. And when you lower that mirror and they look back at you, if the answer is yes, then you're on the right path. But if the answer is no, you put the mirror back up and turn it around so you can face yourself. This program today has to reassess and reevaluate either the approach or the message. And then most importantly, to control what actually exists. Being able to sell matters. And when you're selling yourself, there's a lot of truth to be told. We'll throw the break there. I want to lead and tease because I want you to understand, if you can't get Daniel Kaelin, there's another legacy quarterback that you better get. And here's the thing. This one will hurt even more if you don't pull the trigger and make it happen. More Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, welcome back to Locked On Huskers. And again, thank you for making Locked On Huskers your first watch and listen each and every single day. Do me a favor, Husker fans. Do me. Jump down there. Hit the subscribe button, like, follow, share, please. If you would, greatly appreciate it. This is why we're here, and we're trying to get this content out to folks who care about the Huskers and what's going on with them. First watch, first listen each and every single day. That's pretty awesome. Your second should be Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown with national analysis and great insights, local experts. Locked On College Basketball Breakdown has everything you need to make the most informed decisions on your bracket. Find the episode Locked On College Basketball Bracket Breakdown wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, if you would. There's always sunshine behind the clouds. And what's the adage? When one door closes, another one opens. So if you can't deliver Daniel Kaelin, quarterback legacy, Husker legacy, Nebraska level talent, Power 5 football talent, if you can't deliver him, then you better have something else going. You better have something else that changes the vibe, the mood, the direction, and the focus of the program. And you have to do it through recruiting. It's one thing to go and get a transfer for somewhere else who says, hey, I was at Georgia Tech. I think Nebraska is a better situation for me. I think it's another level. It's me elevating and escalating my resume by attending Nebraska. That's fine and dandy and wonderful and a great way to fix what's wrong. But when it comes to recruiting legacy, that is a far greater identifier for the state of the union of your football program. It is important for you to be able to tell the people who helped build this program up to its blue blood level and its iconic standing in college football, and then for that message to be passed along. See, the history behind this only matters if there's a benefit to it, current and future. That's what's required. That's what all this is about. This is why you go through the bug eaters. You go through all of the history of it, and you understand the history of Memorial Stadium. You understand the history of the university. You understand the coaching tree and how you went from what was a pretty good program back in the day, and then Bob Devaney comes along, and even in his greatness, there was friction, things you had to get through, things you had to grow through. And in that, you set steps and ladders for what the program could be. And once you learn that you can be great in your situation and circumstance, then you're forever beholden to it. Therefore, like that, you can't say, well, you can't recruit to Nebraska. Yes, you can. Hey, you can't get that kind of talent in Nebraska. Yes, you can. You can't draw a crowd in Nebraska. Yes, you can. You can't raise funds and accumulate resources. Yes, you can. You could do it with a second coach. Oh, my goodness. Yes, you can. So it's not a one-off. It's not lightning in a bottle. It's actually something that you do. Situation and circumstance. It's something you do. And you're able to do it. Two different groups of coaches, two different groups of players. As a matter of fact, even in the space that we're talking about, you won it under Devaney back-to-back. Then you won it under Tom Osborne back-to-back. And then the unmitigated gall to come back and roll that sucker again years later with a different group, a different set of talent. Different style of ball. Different style of ball. So you won championships in three different groups with three different styles of play and three different standards of football. So to say that you can't get it done now is simply not true, and it's not acceptable. So when you pass that message along to legacy Huskers, kids who grew up talking about Nebraska, seeing Nebraska highlights, I guarantee you that in these homes, there's Nebraska gear and there are Nebraska jerseys on the wall, and there may be trophies that were won. There may be honors that were put in play. And if you can't deliver them to the University of Nebraska, it makes the program stop, inhale, and take a deep breath and say, who are we? Why is this happening? What's going on? Now, times are different. Recruiting's different now. If somebody has talent, everybody in the country knows it, and everybody in the country wants to get to them. Dylan Raiola, look, everybody in the country wants him. Literally every program in the country wants him. The hope is that you didn't get Kaelin because you honestly feel like and are capable of saying, I think we have our guy. I think we have our guy. We feel pretty good about having our guy. And if Kaelin looked at and asked the question, because if I'm the Kaelin family, what I would have asked is, are we the guy? Are we the guy? Because in most places that he's talking to, he would be the guy. There's no other legacy in that space for him. And when he talked to Missouri, there was no legacy for him to worry about. Wasn't a thing. But with Dylan, everybody wants in. Everybody wants to be a part of. And everybody would bank their future on Dylan Raiola. So, what that leads me to hope is this. My hope is that the Husker football program has a legacy quarterback on the way to Lincoln. That's my hope. Am I betting on that? Am I hoping for it? There's a wish list happening, and at the very top of it is that we get that notification that Dylan Raiola decides that he wants to be a member of and a leader of the Husker football program. That's my hope. That's my wish. Not willing to bet. I'm smarter than that. I'm smarter than that. We'll throw the break here. I want to go ahead and tell you just a reminder, no sweat first bet. If you're going to jump on FanDuel.com/lockedon, you can see the link there below. Up to $1,000, and if your first bet doesn't win, you don't lose your money. I'm not telling you that you should bet on March Madness. I'm not telling you should bet on baseball or UFC or whatever. No, I'm not telling you that. But if that's your thing, download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's easy, it's safe. Have at it, enjoy yourself. We'll come back. We'll close out this episode of Locked On Huskers. Hey, gang, as we close out this episode of Locked On Huskers, again, I'm going to thank you for making us a part of your day and a part of how you consume your Husker information. Greatly appreciate it. It means a lot for you to do that. Through the course of what we do, we put together concepts, theories, ideas, and I want you to free think whatever we're talking about. It's not necessary for you to absolutely agree with everything that I say. I'm just voicing my opinion based on the facts that I know and the information that I have. What I can tell you is that here's the thing, that information changes from day to day, often from hour to hour, in what you hear and in what you're told is going on in the program. And being around players and being around coaches and being around alumni and being around fans, a lot of times these podcasts are reactionary to the conversations that have happened in full before I post these podcasts. So sometimes it's talking to former players that will either they'll be so passionate in the topic that I have to share it with you, or that they will be so informative on the topic that I decide to share it with you. Sometimes it's fans that will see me and say, hey, love the podcast. Can you talk about this? Because I love your insight. Or sometimes the conversation leads to conversations about things like today, where the conversation locally was about recruiting and the need and demand for something good to happen. That's what recruiting is about. As much as we spend a lot of time on it, that I'm like, to me, recruiting rarely changes the scope, the level and location of the football program. Not immediately. Often it's later. I mean, there are the rare exceptions where Herschel Walker comes in or a Mike Rozier comes in and changes the program. But the quarterbacks who have made Nebraska, they weren't people that when they were recruited blew the top off of recruiting discussion. Running backs tend to do that. But if you're going to build and change Nebraska as a program, most Nebraska fans will tell you that it starts up front and that it's linemen, and very rarely do signing linemen take the roof off of recruiting gets this discussion. even in Nebraska, where the pipeline's a thing. So a lot of the conversations are driven by fan conversation, by alumni conversation, by player conversation, by coach conversation. That's what that is. So again, as you talk quarterback recruiting, you need bang for the buck. Currently that exists. Rich Torres is in the program, Trevor Purdy, Heinrich Harburg, Logan Smothers, Jeff Sims, and Casey Thompson. That's 6. So whatever level of quarterback you're talking about on the recruiting side, in order to shake that room up, it has to be an elite level talent, because the people that I just mentioned aren't going to be shaken by anybody that's not a stud, that's not the guy. And it would be really nice if Nebraska got the guy. That'll be it for this episode of Locked On Huskers. Thank you for making it your first watch and listen each and every day. Your second should be Locked On College Basketball. Joining Isaac and Andy for great guests, great coaches, great players, very insightful to give you informed information, so you know that, hey, going forward, if I want to know what I'm talking about, folks from Locked On College Basketball will get you informed and prepared to have those discussions. You can find them on YouTube or however else you consume your podcast. We'll close with the 3 words that we love so much. Go Big Red.